I went by, yes. Yeah, and I went by on Sunday and I saw the debris on there.
You're up.
I don't know if anybody.
We're going to do something the residential first. All right, good evening, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order. Apologize on the delay. It is 7:06, December 10th, Bridgewater Township Zoning Board of Adjustments, regular meeting. Both adequate and electronic notice of this meeting specifying the time, place, and manner in which such notice was provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-6. Specifically, on January 9th, 2024, proper notice was sent to the Courier News and the Star Ledger and filed with the clerk at the Township of Bridgewater and posted on the Municipal Bulletin Board. Please be aware of the Zoning Board of Adjustment policy for public hearings. No new applications will be heard after 9:30 p.m., and no new testimony will be taken after 10. If you're able, please rise for the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, Nancy and Kevin. Can we have a roll call, please?
Before we start, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to introduce Kevin Luthwaite, our new zoning officer and board secretary, deputy. We'll figure it out.
Great.
But we want to welcome Kevin.
Welcome.
Nice to meet y'all.
Likewise.
Chairman Foose,
Here.
Mr. Wiley,
Here.
Mrs. Amin. Yes. Mr. Sweeney. Here. Mr. Fresco. Here. Mr. Bongiorno. Absent. Mr. Gajewski. Also absent. Mr. Seacat.
Here.
Mr. Kulak.
Here.
Mr. Vesio.
Here.
Mr. Gabbett.
Here.
For the record, Rich Aller, Board Attorney's present, Catherine Sarmad, Board Planner, and Bill Burr, Board Engineer. You have a quorum. You
And our new zoning officer.
are new zoning officer.
All right. All right, thank you very much. At this point, I'm going to open the meeting to members of the public that would like to speak on any land use issue that is not on our agenda tonight. Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion. We're going to do some board minutes tonight. We've got 5 sets. And why don't we try and group them? I know there's some changes. We have a couple sets of transcripts. Why don't I just open it up to changes and comments on any of the minutes? I know, Mrs. Amin, you had a few.
We have 5 or 6 minutes.
I have 6. 6.
I have some little minor corrections here and there,
Okay.
which I will go over with
Nancy?
Nancy,
Okay.
and I'll give you, so you can mark it up on your.
But you agree on the spirit of what we've discussed at the
Yeah,
meetings?
during the break or whenever.
If they're editorial changes, we'll pass them along to Joanne. She prepared the minutes,
Okay.
and she'll make them, we can adopt, whichever ones Mrs. Amin has revisions to, we can adopt them as amended, assuming that you would all be,
All right, so I'm going to go back to Mr. Foos's question. Is there was no major discrepancies, just minor? Okay,
Just
then
like
I'm fine with that.
Little bit of typos or those kind of.
That's fine,
just editorial. So we'll adopt them.
All right.
with her changes.
So I'll seek a motion for the cosmetic changes and that we're all in agreement. Anyone that votes yes is going to agree with the spirit and the concreteness of the minutes that they properly represent what was discussed at each meeting.
I move it,
All right, that was for all 6, Jim?
all 6 of them with Mrs. Amin's minor
second.
editorials.
Mrs. Amin was the second on that.
Is it okay if we start with October 22nd? Or did you want to roll call each, or just want to do
We're
it?
going to roll call them all. So it's August 13th, 2024 through October 22nd, 2024, one general vote.
Okay, we'll start with August 13th.
We can group them all together, do one vote.
All 6, we just did a,
Yeah, the motion was for all 6.
Okay.
One package, you can
Chairman Foose,
Yes.
Mr. Wadley,
Yes.
Mrs. Amin,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney. Yes. Mr. Fresco.
Yes.
Mr. Seacat,
Yes.
Mr. Kulak,
Yes.
Mr. Vesio,
Yes.
Mr. Gabbett,
All right, thank you. We have resolutions. We have one that was for 821 Hawthorne Avenue. Any comments or changes? All right, can I have a motion, please?
I move.
Mr. Wiley, second.
I'll second.
Mrs. Amin?
Chairman Foose,
Yes.
Mr. Wadley,
Yes.
Mrs. Amin,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney. Mr. Gieske. I'm sorry, he's absent. And Mr. Seacat.
Yes.
No one else was eligible.
All right, thank you very much, Nancy. All right, and as for our applications tonight, before we do that, Rich, why don't you just take us through what we're going to have at our reorg meeting? I know we
Yeah,
have quite a few.
Yeah, the board is carrying 7 matters over to the reorganization meeting. They are 1200 Route 22 Land Investors and 1200 Route 22 LLC Holding, Visions and Pathways, 821 Bridgewater LLC and the Jewish Community Center of Somerset, Hunterdon, and Warren, CX Towers, St. Bernard's of Clairvaux, Bridgewater Realty 2 LLC, which is Starbucks, and Belly Holdings LLC. Again, all of those carried into the reorganization meeting in January 14th.
7 PM in this room.
So, Rich, at that point, we're just going to reschedule them, correct?
They will all get dates at the reorg meeting.
Okay.
But I'm looking at the number, there are a total of 7 applications being moved.
Yes.
They will get dates, hopefully, on January 14th.
Oh, 14.
It'll
We'll
be a-
stay here all night.
It'll be a busy 2025, for sure.
Yeah.
While we're on this, if I might, I was gonna wait for new business, but since it's been brought up, I'll bring it up now. This backlog is getting a little disturbing. I
Yeah.
mean, we've got 7 cases. They're gonna take, on average, 2 meetings per case.
Yep.
If not more than that.
Agreed.
That's 14 meetings.
Yes.
That's more than halfway through next year.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
We need to figure out a way to strongly encourage applicants to present their applications in a much more efficient manner,
Okay.
a much less time-consuming manner. We might also want to think about going back to the old schedule, which had 3 meetings per month. I don't know the answer, I just am bringing up what I think is
Nancy
something
has
that
thrown out
needs
a
to be
couple
looked
ideas,
at.
but because, like, take Starbucks, for example. We blew the case up because someone was going to die if it went forward the way it was. You go 1,200 land use. That's a redevelopment issue. That's probably going to come off the first of the year. Nancy suggested maybe we start some meetings at 6:30. That's a possibility. That's a notice problem. But if you go through each one of these, it comes down to the applicant every time. Now, we have 2 houses, one of which burnt down recently in town. I have moved them up. I've worked with Nancy. If I am chairman next year, I want to hear that case first. And tonight, we're hearing the residentials first. I'm with you, Mr. Sweeney. We got to get these guys moving faster. If I was paid by the hour, though, I see how these things drag out.
Well, we should all be thinking about this. And maybe
Couldn't
we
agree
can
more.
talk more, in a more detailed fashion at our reorg meeting. You know, I don't have the answers.
Yeah.
I don't know that any of us do, but we should be thinking about how we can speed up this process.
I agree, and thank you for bringing it up, and we'll work on it. I agree. This backlog is too long.
And I'm going to agree with Mr. Sweeney, we have to find some sort of resolution to this, because even if you use the average here and add in new cases, we're into 2026 at that point.
Yes,
And we do need a resolution to this.
agreed.
Well, at some point, the board could entertain special meetings. I don't know that you need to have 3 scheduled for every month going forward, but you can do special meetings as you see fit.
Yep.
Right, the only issue I have with that is we used to, before you were on, and Jeff might have still been around, we did have the first, third, and last, and we eliminated the one because just whatever reason at the time. But the problem is that half the time we come and we find out just before that, we give up our whole night to begin with and find out we're not gonna meet, and that really fouls up somebody like myself. So is it fair to add 12 more meetings a year? No.
Well, that's what I'm saying, you could just add a special meeting as needed.
So we would schedule it, and the way we've been working all of this year is, we'd end up with them, oh yeah, 5 minutes before, if something happened, we're not meeting.
Well, before we talk about this too much and lose tonight's window for the two cases,
So
let's,
just bring it up to add to
let's
that.
bring it up at reorg, let's enjoy the holidays, let's hopefully get through 2 cases tonight, and we'll take it from there. I am very blessed that we have Nancy and now Kevin helping juggle in all this, because behind the scenes with every case, there's a notice issue, there's objectors that come up, there's a myriad of different things that happen that create these delays. It's certainly not this board. You know, I think we're pretty damn efficient, and we've never not had a quorum. We've never not had more than, less than 7 people here, and, it's certainly not our fault. So thank you, Nancy, for a great year in advance. So with that said, we've got our resolutions done. We've got our announcements for our cases done. We're going to move on. We're going to put our residential case first, and I believe that's Mr. Sullivan representing 10 Asante Lane.
Thank you. Yes, good evening. John Sullivan from the offices of Sullivan & Sullivan, representing the applicant. I'll initially defer to Mr. Aller to let us know if we have jurisdiction.
Yes, Mr. Sullivan, I've reviewed your notice. It's in proper form, was published timely, and served by certified mail to the property owners within 200 feet timely, so the board does have jurisdiction. Thanks.
Brief introduction of the application. I'm representing the applicants who are the owners of 10 Asante Lane. That's lot 47 in block 906, as designated on your tax map and as shown on our variance plan.
Hey, John, could you use that microphone? We're having problems with that one, if you're going to stand. If you want to sit, a microphone will pick you up.
My back's a little stiff, so I'm going to try and stand as much
All
as
right.
possible. Yeah, so the property is located at 10 Asante Lane, lot 47, block 906. As you may be aware, Asante Lane is a private lane. The actual frontage for Asante Lane is on Washington Valley Road, and then Asante Lane meanders up the mountain a little bit. And I believe there's 6 6 lots on there, 5 of them which are developed at this point. Property is located in an R50 zone. We have just over 177,000 square feet on this lot. It's currently a vacant parcel of land. There was previously a home on the property, and that was demolished many years ago because it was not in very good condition. Our application before you tonight is for a bulk variance to permit the construction of a brand-new single-family home on the lot. And the bulk variance in question is for lot width because of the fact that we do not have any frontage on a public road and only on Asante Lane. We're taking the lot width of Asante Lane as 79.44 feet as our lot width, and we would have required 165 feet otherwise. The lot itself, in terms of its width along Asante Lane, I do believe exceeds 165 feet. The plans that we've submitted are the architectural plan prepared by Architectural Plus, dated July 22nd of this year, and the variance plan prepared by the Reynolds Group, dated March 8th of 24, and last revised August 27th of 24. Other than that one variance, we are compliant with everything else that's required for the lot. And our witnesses tonight, I'm going to have Gregory Egnatuk testify. He's the potential builder of this home. He's not going to testify as an expert. He's simply going to explain to you the plans that for the house that we're proposing, and he has a little bit of historical information regarding the prior dwelling. We have Mitchell Ardman, he's our engineer, and we have Michael Pesolano, who is our professional planner. And if I may, I would begin with Mr. Egnatuk.
Yeah, you want me to swear all your witnesses at the same time? We can just get them all up here, it'd be great. And our folks too, if you would rise, and then everyone just raise your right hand. You solemnly swear that the testimony you will give to this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. And just from my left to right, just for the record, state your names, please.
J. Pesolano, P-E-S-S-O-L-A-N-O, planner.
Greg Egnatuk, E-G-N-A-T-U-K, the builder.
First initial
Initial F, Mitchell Ardman, A-R-D-M-A-N, site engineer.
William Burr, zoning board engineer.
Catherine Salmon, zoning board planner.
Thank you, everyone.
Now, Mr. Ignatuk, you're a builder by trade,
Yes,
and you're the potential builder for this particular home?
yes.
And can you explain to the board the home that we want to build? Well, why don't we start with the prior home? Talk a little bit about that, what was on the lot, give an idea of its size, condition, and when it was demolished.
Sure. The existing home was built in, or the original home, I should say, was built in 1942. It was about a 3,000 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2 full kitchens, and a 1-car garage with a large Morton building that was in the rear of the property, which had an office and a bathroom in it. It was demolished in 2016, and all the demo permits were closed out, so that was completed. The new home that is being proposed to be built is a 3,224 square foot colonial with a 2-car garage. The house is 71 feet 6 wide by 38 foot 10 deep, approximately 32 feet high. It has 4 bedrooms on the 2nd floor with 2 full bathrooms. It has a guest room on the 1st floor with a full bathroom. It has a half bath, a full unfinished basement, and unfinished attic above the 2nd floor living space. It has a study, a family room, breakfast room, kitchen, dining room, foyer, mudroom, and a 21-foot 4 by 14-foot exterior deck.
Now, there was a previous application on this property back in 2013. We've submitted that resolution in our application materials. And that did involve the demolition of that original home and an approval for the construction of a new single-family dwelling. Is that right?
Yes.
And in terms of, I know the resolution did not have a whole lot of detail, but it did say that the house would have to be no larger than 40 by 80. How do we match up in terms of what was previously approved?
Yeah, it was a 40 by 80 envelope that the house had to fit within, and we are 71 feet, so about 9 feet short of that, by 38 deep, so about 1.5 feet short on the depth.
So we're within that footprint?
Yes.
And I believe there was also some site improvements that were to be made. Could you just describe those and whether or not those have already been taken care of?
I'm not sure of all the site improvements. I know they had to run the sewer in, they had tree plantings, but all of the improvements that were listed in the application were signed off on and approved.
And then I think there was also a requirement of that prior resolution that an easement and maintenance agreement be recorded in the county clerk's office for all of the owners of Asante Lane.
Correct.
That was done, correct?
Yes.
We've also submitted a copy of that with our application materials. Essentially, it gives access to all 6 of the lots up here to use the road, and then it calls for shared maintenance to be, and the cost to be split amongst all of those lot owners.
So, Mr. Sullivan, so the road is owned by the 6 homes?
Yep, I can have Mr. Ardman address that a little further. It looks like the road itself is actually located on this lot and lot 47. We have a colorized exhibit we're going to show you, and I think it'll be a little easier to see. So those 2 lots have given the right to everybody else to use it as a private land. Those are the only questions I have for Mr. Eggenberg.
Board questions?
Yeah, what's the story with services? Is it a well, is there gonna be blasting, is there electric there, water service, all that?
There is an existing well on the property that was capped, which we are going to utilize. The sewer connection, the sewer line is already run and it's tapped in for that lot. There is existing electric on the property and existing gas in front of the property.
Board professionals.
I do not have any questions.
Great.
I have no questions for this
All
witness.
right. Members of the public, questions? All right. Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Hey, Mr. Ardman, would you just state your qualifications for the board?
Certainly. You heard I was sworn in. I'm a president of the Reynolds Group. I've been a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey for over 30 years. I've testified boards throughout the state over that time for site plans and subdivisions. I have testified before this board. It's been quite a while. I've also had the opportunity with the Township Engineering Office over those 30 years to do roadway and drainage improvement projects.
All right, this board certainly accepts your qualifications and expert in engineering.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And Mr. Ardman, you prepared the plans and the accompanying drawings that we submitted to the board?
Yes, I did.
And you visited the site and you're familiar with the application?
That's correct.
And could you explain to the board the site as it currently exists? And you heard Mr. Weidelli's question about Sante Lane. Could you address that as well?
Certainly, and what I have before you, and if you want any handout copies, is an exhibit. Basically, it's the sheet that we submitted, that's P1.
Well, John, we're going to mark that A1, okay,
Sure.
applicant's Exhibit 1.
Yeah, and for reference, P1 revised 8/27/24, which has been just colorized for presentation. So just for orientation, and I will try to be brief because we want to move these applications along. We have Washington Valley Road on the bottom of the site, that is the south. We're basically across from Newman Lane is where the entrance where Asante Lane comes up. Asante Lane is in gray here, and it comes up through this site and to the proposed property. You also see it veering off to the right, and you see a second existing house. It proceeds, once you get to the property, it also proceeds to the west and goes off the lot onto lot 56 and further to the west. Our planner actually has another good aerial exhibit that'll show the surrounding lots, but as you heard, it's this lot plus 5 other lots that have access to this. The property slopes from the top, from the north, southward on the lot. There are a few steeper slopes, but there are no slopes over 30% and minimal over 20%. The area which we're proposing to put the house on has been generally cleared. There was the existing house that you heard about, I'm pointing out on the rendering here. It's kind of on the northern third of the property. Where the house is going, there was a large gravel area on the property as well. That gravel has since been removed from the property. That's kind of the existing conditions. There are it's a mixture of wooded areas and kind of scrubby areas around where the house is going. Back to Asante Lane, yes, there's well-documented cross-access easements and maintenance easements. As I said, we've been doing work in Bridgewater a long time. We know some of those old lanes are not well-documented. This one is and has good easements and maintenance agreements between all these lots. So once again, it is located largely on the property. One small correction, not to say our attorney would ever make a mistake, but just to clarify, there is the bulk of the frontage is on Asante, but this lot actually does front on Washington Valley Road with that dimension you heard at the setback, and that's, you'll hear about that. That is what the variance is for this application, for the 79.44 feet versus the 165 feet required. So proposed, again, it's the single-family house. You heard Mr. Egnatuk describe, colonial style. It'll fit well within the neighborhood. I was going to go into the utilities, but you've heard those described already as part of the other conditions of approval on the prior application. Some of the, like the well is there, and some of the other taps were put in. So that is really the nuts and bolts of what we're doing. I think the best way to give you any more information is just to go to your staff joint engineering and planning review memo, and I could hit on a couple of those other points that haven't been answered as yet.
Will the electric utilities be underground?
We got to get you on microphone. Yeah.
Can't do it that way. First, announce who you are so the record is clear.
Greg Egnatuk. Right now, the electric service is overhead and comes through this lot that fronts on Washington Valley, goes through the center of this lot to a pole that's located here, and then it cuts off and services the house to the right. JCP&L is going to remove this pole. They're going to install a new pole here, and it's going to run straight. Instead of cutting through this lot, it's going to go straight up that lot. And they've given us the option of either putting in doing an overhead service to our home or putting it under. It's kind of at our discretion at this point.
I see. Thank you.
Just a couple of things that I wanted to cover in the joint planning report. There was a question about the FAR. I know we have a very large lot, and not that large of a home, so I don't consider it an issue, but.
Correct. Yeah, so the FAR was calculated based on that house size that you heard from Mr. Egnatuk. And again, with almost 3 times the size, we're well below. Technically, we could have over a 20-some thousand square foot house. So we'll be well below that. And we've, as to kind of jump ahead, with that calculation, we did factor in the hillside reduction factors that are needed. So that is on our zoning chart, but I'll clarify any questions that staff may have on that.
And then the only other thing I think we needed to cover is there going to be any tree removal and replacement?
Sure, we do have marked on the plan. It's limited to just 6 trees that are in that area of the house that will be replaced. As part of the old approval that you've heard us refer to, there were 9 pine trees that were required, and if you drive up there, you'll see, and it kind of blocks the view downhill. And as they've been planted many years ago, those 6 to 8 footers are over 20 foot high now. And aside for, there's actually over 12 of them, except for one of them leaning a bit, they're actually in good shape there.
And I'm sorry, are we proposing any additional trees?
None proposed at this time. As part of the package, I'm sure the homeowner will do some landscaping around, but there's really, with the existing trees that are around the lot and the house, it's going to sit in that nice wooded enclave there.
I see in the white box, this is existing tree to be removed.
Right, there's that, about 6 trees total.
Okay, and you've already planted 9, I heard?
Yes.
So where are you going to put these 6? Where are you going to replant them?
Oh, so we didn't have a plan for replanting this.
Let's come up with one real quick.
Okay.
I mean, this is on a hillside in Martinsville, and, it's, people look up at this hillside. I think it's important to maintain the canopy.
Okay.
Where do you think you can fit in 6 trees?
Oh, there are plenty of areas. Like I said, there are wooded areas of the site. There's some dead trees that are down, so I don't think we'd have any problem working with staff to fit them on the lower side of the lot to help give some screening, although the house will be pretty well screened, and then to infill on the lots, just some open areas.
All right, so Mr. Sullivan, you would stipulate that any removal would be replaced in kind?
Well,
Thank you.
Can you tell the board, with respect to Asante Lane, as it pertains to this lot and provides access to the lot, as I'm looking at the drawing to the right, as a result of the construction that you're planning, will Asante Lane be repaved both to your new house that you propose and to access to the house to the right?
The driveway coming into the new house, that is going to be new pavement in that area.
Right.
Not a plan to repave the remainder of Asante Lane.
I was up there driving today, and it's not in the best shape.
Right.
Then if you veer off to the left and go up to the homes that are higher up, it's not in great shape either. But I'm guessing those are driveways, quote unquote. It's no longer Asante Lane, or am I wrong?
Well, it's private, and it's all labeled, and it shows on the tax map as Asante Lane also.
Okay.
But it's a private, and that, those homeowners have driven that for a while. I was there at the start of the job. I was there again today, probably passed you. But it's in fair condition, but it's
I was just curious to know if you planned on establishing kind of a baseline by repaving it as part of the construction project, and then moving forward, there's some sort of maintenance plan that would serve all the neighbors. Because I'm not clear how all of the homes interrelate to the maintenance of Asante Lane, if at all, other than a gentleman's agreement.
Well, it is more than a gentleman's because it's all filed and there's deeds and easements there, so that gives them prescribed rights there. And, each person really on their own lot is responsible. By this application, we really couldn't insist on the other people upgrading their portions either of the driveway.
Okay, thank you.
Are you referring to the easement and maintenance agreement then?
The only
have a
other
question.
point Mr. Byrd brings up about the drainage. So again, we will be having, if you look at overall from what was here and you heard about the house and the Butler building and all the stone that's been removed, it's actually a reduction from what was there. Concur, and I'll put the notes on the plan for Mr. Byrd that we're a minor stormwater development since they're well less than a quarter acre of a new impervious area. The drainage right now, there's an inlet that's actually on the high side, so the house side of where Asante Lane goes to the west. Needed a little cleaning out today, so then probably a little more maintenance. And I would say on behalf of my client, that can be a consideration to make sure that that inlet and that downstream pipe get cleaned out as part of this application. That won't be a big task there. But as far as stormwater, unless Mr. Burr was looking for anything else, I think just making sure the drainage goes towards that inlet and gets piped on where the drainage goes down south from there, I think that would take care of our drainage for this property.
So I have a question. The green part that you have on your drawing,
Yes.
does that represent the property that is owned by this particular owner, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, when I look at the top part, there is a very small strip of green. Is that also part of his property? Go down south.
Oh, the bottom,
You come from Washington Valley and you make the turn.
yep.
So
That property?
that particular road is passing through the property?
Yes, that's part of this lot. That's part of the,
Through his lot, okay.
yeah, that's part of the 4 acres of this property.
I see, okay. Now, how wide is this road?
It's about 12 to 14 feet, depending where you are on it. It varies.
2 lanes, right? One going in, one going out. Are there 2 lanes for that road?
I mean, it's not striped with lanes here. It's an old Bridgewater private lane.
With that many houses, if someone is coming up and then you get stuck or you have to wait?
My experience on these, there's plenty of room to yield. Might you have a tire off the edge to give common courtesy and let somebody go? Sure. But there are plenty of, with the driveways in different areas to pull off, there's areas to pull off and give a courtesy pass to your neighbor.
Okay. All right.
All right, any other board questions?
Yes, I've got one. And I apologize if you mentioned this earlier. Is the proposed location of the new home the same as the location that was proposed back in 2013?
Basically, yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question just to clarify things. I'm looking at the FAR. I know it's well under the limit here, but, you know, I'm looking at your hillside development, 144,000 square feet of developable area, and looking at the FAR of .036, that would yield a 5,200 square foot home. I'm just trying,
I didn't,
I'm looking at what your FAR is in your application, which is .036. And looking at the hillside development calculation, that you have 144,000 square feet. I mean, that would yield a home about 5,200 square feet. I just want to get some clarity. How'd you calculate your FAR here? Or, I know you're well into the limit. I just wanted clarity just to make it clear exactly.
sure, so, and that may be what your planner was getting at, if there was a discrepancy in the number. I thought we used the lower number, you know, there's the full site number and the lower number, but I think the testimony is that you heard that we're going to keep the house size as Mr. Egnatuk described. So if I have to adjust that number,
Sure.
not a problem. But that's the house size that it'll be.
About 3,200 square feet.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, board professionals.
Thank you. The colorized exhibit, is the green intended to show areas that are not paved? Or is it just to outline the area of the lot, essentially?
Both, yeah. So the gray should just be the paved area, and the brown is the house, and the green is the rest that is non-paved.
Okay, there is, if you look closely, and if you look at the variance plan, that was submitted as part of the application, there's an area that says stone directly behind the proposed house.
Yes.
Is that an existing part?
Yeah, there is a busy plan there, so a lot of it was showing the same thing. That is the old stone that was there many years ago that has been removed.
Okay.
So we can clarify that by note.
And that'll be reseeded, I suppose, with
they're
grass?
actually,
It's a good portion of the surrounding the house.
yeah, so on the left side of the plan, there's a note, remove existing stone, topsoil, and seed.
Okay,
That actually has been done.
okay, thank you. And then as far as the FAR calculation, I believe the 3,200 or so square foot home is accurate based on the FAR worksheet that was part of the application package, the Bridgewater Township form. But it also includes about an 1,800 square foot basement, which contributes to the FAR. So I think that's where the total FAR calculation comes from, if I'm correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's where the total comes from. So they calculated it correctly, but the 3,200 square feet is a little bit off in that it doesn't capture that basement area. I don't think I have anything else, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mitch, just a couple questions. So steep slope-wise, you provided calculations on your plan, but your prior testimony was there's no plus 30 slopes on
Correct.
this lot?
Right.
So certainly no disturbance then?
Correct.
Critical
Right.
slopes?
Yep.
Okay. And did I understand correctly that you're going to revise your plan to provide the updated calculations showing how you arrived at the FAR and the lot coverage?
We will do that. No problem. Yep.
And then from a drainage perspective, I agree that this is a minor project, but I also note because we're in some of those upland steep slope areas, and you heard the chairman's concern about replacing some trees to be removed, I can't help but think there's an opportunity to manage some of the runoff from the home and the new driveway extension. Is that something your client would be willing to look into and work with engineering to address?
Certainly.
By way of a dry well or
Yeah,
some
if we
type
need
of
a-
rain garden, et cetera?
Yeah, some version of that, no problem. We can work with you on that.
Very good. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Bill. Members of the public, questions on Mr. Ardman's testimony, his engineering testimony? All right, seeing none, your next witness, Mr. Sullivan.
Hello again. Gladly. I'm Michael J. Pessolano, licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey, originally licensed in 1984, practicing at the municipal level ever since. I have made a couple of appearances before this board. Maybe some of you recognize me. And no challenge to my license ever. It remains in good standing. I represented half a dozen northern New Jersey boards as board planner, but now in this era of my career, I'm pretty much appearing exclusively as an expert planning witness on these matters.
Welcome back. It's good to see you, and
you, Mr.
we accept you as an expert in planning.
Thank you. Will you still be so pleased if I hand out an exhibit?
Please.
Okay. Just going to extend my testimony a little bit, but I think it provides some meaningful insight.
Well, if you wanted to sprint, we wouldn't hold that against you.
A2.
I have,
I'm
I
passing
have
it
one
out, if
already.
you would
Okay.
explain.
Sure. So do you want the 5-hour version or the 10-hour version? Just a little planning humor, very little. I know time is precious here. So on sheet 1 of A2, it's a representation of the subject property similar to the exhibit you just saw, but showing the subject property in yellow. And it illustrates to me that the main takeaway is that this is a very unusual lot, unusual in its configuration, but it does show that it has a connection with Washington Valley Road at its very southern end. The next sheet on A2 simply verifies the zoning district, that this site is fully within the R50 district, not even close to another zoning district. Sheet 3 is an aerial image that depicts the development pattern that's on the ground today and shown on the site in a rectangular shape, approximated, this is not to scale, approximately showing where the proposed new dwelling would lie. And before we leave this page, I wanted to point out that you can see, literally see the pavement of Asante Lane going along what would be the front yard of the proposed dwelling. And then it continues on to other dwellings that are at the back of the nice open lawn areas to the west or left, and you can also see the relative position of number 6, which is to the right, that also uses Asante Lane for access. Now coming to sheet 4 of A2 are a series of ground photos taken by myself, and very recently, in fact. And image 1 in the upper left shows at the driveway to the left of the site, to the west of the site, intersects with Asante Lane. I'm standing right there at the end of that driveway in front of number 14 to take this image of those now mature evergreen trees that were part of the 2013 approval that were discussed earlier. In the upper right is image 2. My car is parked on the shoulder of Asante Lane, that segment that goes directly in front of the subject property. Clearly, 3 or 4 vehicles could fit side by side in that well-preserved opening of vegetation. Yes, the traveled way, the cartway width itself is smaller, but as was testified to earlier, plenty of room for maneuvering to have 2 vehicles pass each other safely and efficiently. And image 3 is more of a close-up from the other direction, standing generally in front of where the proposed driveway off of Asante Lane to the subject home would be located, again showing ample width for passage of vehicles of all kinds. The segment of Asante Lane that joins with Washington Valley Road is shown in image 4 in the lower right photograph. This is a little bit wider than the other segment that I showed in the other photos. So plenty of room for maneuvering, visibility, passage in 2 directions. Finally, on sheet 5 of A2 in the upper left, image 5 shows the actual intersection of Asante Lane. That's on the right, sort of where the guardrail that bends points to it. That's Asante Lane. Image number 6 shows the existing segment of Asante Lane that goes to number 6. Asante Lane, lower left, image 7, we see number 14 and number 18, Asante Lane, and then image 8 is a view of that southern segment of Asante Lane that goes down to Washington Valley through the growth to the nursery school that abuts the property on the east. So that provides the setting for me. I did touch base with the applicable zoning regulations, master plan for the community, reviewed the application materials with my client's team, and made a finding that the proposed lot width deficiency that is both existing and proposed at the same dimension, 79.44 feet, where 165 feet is required, can be granted pursuant to both type C tests, the C1 test of hardship and the C2 evaluation under the weighing analysis, where benefits need to outweigh the detriments. Only one test needs to be demonstrated, but in this particular case, both are satisfied, and if you will bear with me, I will be concluding right after I tell you the positive and negative criteria under each test. The lot is exceptionally narrow at the setback line from Washington Valley Road, the true approved road frontage, and on the basis of that, and by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property, a C1 variance can be granted. That's meeting the positive criteria for hardship. I will come to the negative criteria for both of them in just a moment. Moving on to the C2 analysis, it meets the 5-part weighing analysis. That's a requirement under the statute and case law. We have a specific piece of property. That's the first part to determine. It's very unusual, very irregular, very oversized in my evaluation. Second part is to determine the public benefits that might accrue to the granting of the relief. This is part of an overall beneficial project that has certain public benefits. Purpose A of the municipal land use law would be advanced because this promotes the general welfare with a fairly low-density single-family use. It is a permitted use, and permitted uses implicitly advance the general welfare under the zoning scheme in the state of New Jersey. Purpose B, to protect from flood, fire, and panic, is also advanced. The site is readily accessed by emergency response equipment and has room for two-way traffic that will be maintained under a formal agreement. Purpose I is also advanced, which is to promote a desirable visual environment. This project will add a nice new home that will fill a visual void in this particular neighborhood. As to public detriment, I see no detriment of a substantial nature, if any at all. This project would effectively restore the lot to a productive state with an attractive and complementary new home that will upgrade the area with ample spacing around the new home. The property has compliant yards, coverage, FAR, et cetera, as you heard, and these features provide no evidence of crowding, reduction of light, air, or open space. The width along Asante Lane is conforming as if that was the frontage, so we have more of a technical deficiency than anything else, given the fact that Asante Lane is adequate and has been functioning adequately to serve these 6 properties for quite some time now, and will continue to do so, in my opinion. With that lot width along Asante Lane being what it is, in other words, meeting the expectation under the ordinance, there's no resulting undesirable visual effects of approving a home on a lot that's too narrow, because the lot really is literally wide enough at the home site along Asante Lane. The adequate cartway width to facilitate two-way traffic and supported by sufficient easements and a maintenance agreement to keep it that way further mitigate any concern of detriment. As to the zone plan impact, I see no impairment to the zone plan or zoning ordinance, let alone any that would do so in a substantial manner. The project enables a permitted use to return to this lot. The zone plan anticipates infill development in the R50 zone. with permitted uses. We are doing that. All the zoning requirements besides width are fully met or exceeded. So the balancing part of that C2 analysis that now is coming to a close is that the benefits of granting the relief will substantially outweigh, in my opinion, any detriments. A home here will be clearly a better planning alternative to a vacant lot in this appealing residential enclave. I submit to you respectfully, approval is warranted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pesolano.
You're most welcome.
Board questions? Seeing none, board professionals?
I have a question that may or may not pertain to the planner's testimony. Our new zoning officer, who has a very keen eye, and you'll hear why, just pointed out something about the roadway, and I know that's been a topic of conversation as part of this because it is a little bit of a unique factor. But there was, like I said, this might not be for this witness, but I thought I'd bring it up because I don't have any questions for him particularly. But the paragraph 4 on page 4 of the original resolution from 2013 had included that there was an encroachment on lot 46. So the property that does gain access from Asante Lane to the direct west, I guess that is, yeah, to the direct west of the road. There's an encroachment that's shown on the corner, the northeast corner of their property. And that last approval had basically said that encroachment would be eliminated. It's hard to tell, and the planner's exhibit was helpful in that it somewhat showed that it was outside of that property line, but it's hard to tell from the angle if that is just giving, if the vantage point is just giving the benefit to that. I would just like to hear if that roadway was ever revised to remove the encroachment.
Mr. Chairman, Mitch Ardman, back to the mic here. So on our exhibit, the P1, there are the sheet and exhibit A1. I believe that's pointing on the corner as you turn here, so the southwest corner of Asante Lane. And there is a sliver that goes outside of the easement agreement, but there is what was then a proposed access easement shown in that area that included that little sliver there. So it was cleaned up not by moving the road, but by providing that access easement. But that was a good point.
Okay, I wasn't, from reading the access agreement, it didn't seem like that was directly addressed, and so I'm not certain if there were two different things going on, because that same condition also included the recordable form of easement for all of those use, and that property does use Asante Lane to gain access to lot 46. So I'm not, the next line after that says eliminate the encroachment. It doesn't say eliminate the encroachment via easement, it just says eliminate the encroachment. So I'm just curious if it wasn't revised, that's fine. It just, I'd like to clear that up as part of this application.
Yeah, let me just grab a copy of my. I'm sorry, Catherine, which lot were you concerned about?
46. So 46 is to the west of Asante Lane and has frontage on Washington Valley.
So it sounds like it's resolved, though.
Yeah, I think that's how it was taken care of. At the time, as you heard from Mr. Egnatuk, all the conditions were satisfied of the resolution to go forward with the demo plan. So it may have been, even though the resolution said move the road, that it was acceptable to not move the road, but have an easement to encapsulate that piece of driveway so it was covered in the easement. But I think, again, shown here, that
Catherine, it sounds like you just want to make sure that the February 26, 2013 resolution, that all conditions have been agreed upon and,
That was what was testified to, so
Yeah.
it didn't match with what's on the plan, so I just wanted to make sure. And otherwise, we should just clarify that via any action that's taken tonight.
Yeah, we see that, as Mr. Ardman said, yeah, that was addressed by easement. Also granting Lot 46 the use of Asante Lane and allowing that little sliver right in here to cross.
and that easement's been filed with the county clerk?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, we have a copy of it in the package, and I can just point to paragraph 1. It's the third paragraph in paragraph 1. Refers to Exhibit B. It says is a meets and bounds description of a small portion of Lot 46, which is 678 square feet, presently being used by the grantees as part of Asante Lane. So that's where it's included in the easement.
Great.
Right, for all the lots using it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Burr?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Members of the public, questions on planning testimony? All right, seeing none. Mr. Sullivan, could you just real quick put on the record the September 26, 2024 County of Somerset Planning Board? Because they did reference, they didn't have any problems with the application, but they said as the site plan is associated with one single-family resident and the plan shows that no changes to the existing shared access point on Washington Valley Road, CR 620, please be advised that the project does not require county action or approval. Should the township require any changes that affect the county right away in the future, the plan should be resubmitted. We satisfied that. We're not changing any of the egress or ingress. Therefore, the county wouldn't have any reason to be renoticed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. If you want to wrap up, Mr. Sullivan.
Yeah, that concludes our witness presentation. We do feel that the application is pretty straightforward. Obviously, it's proposing an appropriate use of this lot, single-family residential in a single-family residential district. The applicant does face practical hardships, essentially from the rather unusual shape of the lot, and our one variance is actually the lot width of the lot when it meets Washington Valley Road. But as we mentioned earlier, when you come up to where the actual home is, you can see we have plenty of lot width. The house fits well into the lot, and it's a lot that's 3 or 4 times larger than what's required by the ordinance. So there's certainly the hardship. You did hear Mr. Pestilano describe the C2 criteria. I tend to agree with them. I think the benefits clearly outweigh any detriment, and quite frankly, I don't see any detriment here. So without repeating all of it, for those reasons, we would ask that you consider granting the application.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Sullivan. At this point, we're going to open up to members of the public that would like to speak for or against this application. Now's your time to approach. All right, seeing none. Rich, why don't you take us through stipulations?
Sure, if there's consideration for an approval, there were some conditions we spoke about, and that would be if there's any tree removal on the lot for the construction of the home, those trees would be replaced in kind. With respect to drainage, the applicant will modify the stormwater drainage system to the satisfaction of the township engineer and provide updated FAR calculations. That was all I had.
All right, Mr. Sullivan, if you're good with that, we're going to open up deliberations.
Yes.
All right, very
We
good.
agree to those conditions.
All right, let's start down to Mr. Gabbett. How are you, sir? Good evening.
It'd help if I turn the microphone on. Yeah, this is a weird shaped lot, but to me, it seems that there's no downside really to this as far as public good, so I would be inclined to support.
All right, thank you. Mr. Kulak.
I would agree. It's a nice complement to the neighborhood. You're going to have a new structure there. You also have the opportunity here to fill in the missing piece and clean up that lot, which is definitely going to benefit the entire neighborhood. So I think it'd be a great addition, and I would support it.
Mr. Seacat.
I have no concerns, and will support the application.
Thank you. Mr. Wiley.
Mr. Sullivan, as usual, it's always nice seeing you. Nice presentation. I'm all for your application.
I'm going to carbon copy what Jim just said. I'm fully in support, and again, Mr. Sullivan, you do a great job as always, and great witnesses. Thank you very much for being so prepared. Mrs. Amin.
In 2013, they had a approval to build a house, right? So based on that, I'm in the favor of approving.
I would assume you voted on this in 2013, right, with Mr. Sweeney? Yes? You were on the board in 2013, right? Great.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Sweeney.
Speaking of the 2013 board, I hold in high regard their decision to approve a similar building in the same site, so I think we ought to do the same thing.
Thank you. Perfect. Mr. Fresca.
I concur. I don't see any issues. I support it.
Mr. Vessia.
Yeah, I have no issues with the application. I think the building, where the house is sited, very proper location, huge lot, modest home, all for it.
I too respect and admire the 2013 zoning board, and I'm going to look to the board for a motion to approve. You were here too, right?
I was here too.
Yeah.
I move that we approve it.
Any seconds, please?
Second.
Mr. Sweeney has the second. Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
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 Yes. Hey, thank you
Unanimous.
very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Have a good evening.
All right.
Next up, we have Solar Landscape LLC, 3 and 5 Finderan Avenue. Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Donna Jennings from the law firm of Valence, Goldman, and Spitzer on behalf of the applicant. As the board is aware, the applicant is here this evening seeking minor site plan approval, a use variance, and some bulk variances to install roof community solar panels on the 2 existing warehouse buildings with associated ground-mounted equipment on property located at 3 and 5 Finderan Avenue and identified as Block 303, Lot 8.01 on the township's tax maps. The property is approximately 20.2 acres and is located in the manufacturing M2 zone. The applicant proposes to install solar panels in connection with Community Solar Energy Program. The state first launched the program as a pilot program in 2018, and the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities voted last year to officially establish a permanent program. Individuals and businesses are now able to greatly benefit from solar energy systems without needing to install solar panels on their own property. Instead, solar energy is generated off-site for use by members of the program. Members receive several benefits, including paying a reduced energy bill by utilizing clean and renewable energy resources. Importantly, these community solar products are required to serve a majority of low and moderate income families. The applicant has been actively involved with the community solar program for several years and continues to install solar energy systems in municipalities across the state. In addition, the applicant requires a use variance because solar energy systems that sell power as part of the community solar program are not permitted in the M2 zone. The record will show that the applicant satisfies both the positive and negative criteria. As the applicant's planner will testify, solar systems are inherently beneficial, satisfying the positive criteria as a matter of law. And there's really no negative impact because you do allow rooftop solars to power the actual building it's on. You just don't allow it to be a community solar. So there would be no real detriment because I don't think anybody driving by that would see the rooftop panels would know the difference as to who is actually receiving the energy at the end of the day. With respect to a couple of the bulk variances, they're generally subsumed in the use variance grant under a case called Price v. Himeji, which our planner will also describe. With that, really, I would like to just indicate that we're going to have 2 witnesses, Kevin Shelley, who is the site engineer, and our professional planner, Andrew Janot, who will support the application. And I believe that we are in receipt of 1 report, which is a joint report by your planner and engineer dated December 3rd, 2024. So with that, I'd like to call my first witness and have them sworn in.
Great, let's swear in everybody.
Come on up, Andrew and Kevin. And Austin, you might as well get sworn in too, in case there's any questions they can't answer. We have also a representative Solar with us, so he can answer any questions if the other two can't.
Would you all raise your right hands, please? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give to this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? And just my left to right, if everyone, just for the record, state your names, please.
Andrew Janu with Beacon Planning. Kevin Shelley, Short Point Engineering.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, and with that, we'd like to start with Kevin Shelley. Give him 1 second. And if you could, Mr. Shelley, just for the benefit of the board, please give your background and qualifications.
Sure. I am a licensed professional engineer in New Jersey since 2012. My license is current and in good standing. I've testified in front of various boards across the state, but have not had the previous pleasure of testifying in front of this board.
And your license is currently valid today?
Correct.
Would the board accept his qualifications as an engineer?
Absolutely.
Thank you. If you could, Kevin, if you could just...
Hold on 1 second, Mrs. Amin.
What is your specialty in engineering? Are you mechanical, electrical, civil?
I practice civil engineering, yes.
You're a licensed professional engineer? Yes. So, as a professional engineer, I'm asking you the question, what exactly is your background? You are electrical engineer, mechanical engineer? Because, you know, this with these panels and all that, I need to ask questions about that.
Civil.
So
engineer.
you are mechanical, electrical?
I'm a civil engineer.
Civil, okay.
Thank you.
If you could, Mr. Shelley, just walk us through the existing site conditions and the applicant's proposal, and if you're going to rely on any exhibits, would you please mark them into evidence?
Sure. I prepared an aerial exhibit of the property. I believe we can enter it as Exhibit A1.
Yeah, that'll be A1, thank you.
Again, it's an aerial exhibit of the property dated today, December 10th, 2024. It's an aerial image, and it has the solar panels up on the roof of the two buildings on the property, just for visual representation. It also shows some of the ground-mounted equipment that will be needed for the property. But again, the subject property has two existing warehouses on it. Both of them operate with tenants that are in the warehousing and distribution business. The applicant proposes to install solar panels on the roof of both buildings. There will be some ground-mounted equipment as part of each system. Each building will have a separate operating system. There'll be a new utility pole, which is a riser pole to bring power from the street. Each will have a transformer, switchgear, CT cabinet, inverters, all on the ground all on the ground adjacent to the building. Both sets of equipment are located in the northwest corner of each building. And again, that is the only other site improvements besides the ground or the rooftop solar. Each of those systems, again, are separate because each building has its own system. In the rear of the property, you can see to the south is the Raritan River. The property does have some environmental constraints, mostly all associated with the river in terms of flood hazard area or wetlands. The equipment locations were specifically selected because they are located in areas of the site that do not have environmental constraints. No DEP permitting is required for the installation of any of the ground-mounted equipment. They're not in any flood zone, don't require any further permitting besides the approval from the township.
When you say they're not in any flood zone, there was a reference in some of the materials to a flood zone map that was dated some time ago. My understanding is there are new maps, and I wondered if you included the new maps in your engineering study and therefore the location of the on-ground equipment necessary to manage the solar power.
The equipment is located in areas that are not impacted by the current flood map.
So the
Or former maps. not impacted by it.
Okay, because I only saw reference to the older maps in the materials that I was looking through. I may have missed it, that's why I'm asking which of the maps you based your site selection for the above-ground equipment on. Because I mean, you know, just for practical purposes, the river's right there. It floods all the time, just when a heavy rain, expected to flood tomorrow. But I'm curious to know how that equipment is going to stay dry.
Again, I don't have the specific map or the date of the map or any additional or the most recent iterations of the flood mapping. Again, the limits of the flooding all take place in the back of the building. Majority of this back area is all located within that floodway. The areas up on the street and adjacent to the road, these are the highest portions of the site. Those are the areas that are not depicted as part of the floodway. We could provide additional information to your board professionals about the maps or any recent additions to maps, but all the flood mapping that we've reviewed, this equipment is located in an area that is not impacted by it.
And the building itself, both buildings, do they flood?
Flooding comes up to the back of the buildings. I am not sure what impact any flooding has on the inside of any of these structures. Again, all of our equipment, the solar panels are up on top of the building. The solar panels are not impacted by any flooding of the property or potential flooding.
Okay. And the applicant in this case does not own these buildings. They're contracting with the building owners to build this for-profit business that will be part of the community solar energy program, therefore generating electricity that they would essentially sell for profit.
Correct. They lease the rooftops, and they in the business to make some money, so yes.
So they're, not being the building owner, they're also, I guess, unaware of any flooding that may have taken place in the buildings that would undermine the structural integrity of the building or in any way threaten the solar panels from collapse should severe flooding take place.
The applicant does a extensive investigation, structural components of the building to, one, ensure that the building can successfully house the panels on the roof. Part of that is a structural investigation across the entire building. So if any signs of building deterioration or anything like that were observed, they probably would not be pursuing this application just due to the, it does not make sense to put panels on top of a building that would be at risk for doing that.
So you're saying that not in your opinion, but in the opinion of the applicant, they've done a structural examination of the building and they're satisfied that their panels would be installed on what I'm going to call a safe building and they would not be threatened by the flooding which might undermine the building.
Correct, I think that's accurate, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any batteries on site?
I am not aware of batteries, no, I think it's
So all energy generated will be sold to the grid and real time. There'll be no storage of any energy at all. And if there was to be any battery or any storage facilities added, it would have to come back to this board. Thank you.
Mr. Shelley, could you point out on your diagram there where the ground-mounted equipment is or will be?
The equipment, so I'll start over on the building on the right, which is 3 Findern. There's a utility pole located right at the overhead power lines here. This small square area, which is shown on the site plans, is the transformer. And then there is a cluster of equipment located just along the western side of the building in this northwest corner that has all the other equipment, inverter, switchgear, panels, CT cabinet. And then for 5 Findern, you have the utility pole, again located up at the frontage, transformer on the ground, and then you have the equipment on the northern side of the building.
Thank you.
I have a question. What is the KW rating of, let's say, on this building, the total kilowatt rating of the panels combined? And on the other building, how much is it? Because I didn't find anything in the submission here.
So each building has, or there's a total of 3,419 modules on the buildings. That would generate approximately 1.2 million kilowatt hours, which is enough to power about 150 homes annually, is what will be generated by these two projects.
1.2 megawatt.
How many megawatts you said?
1.2 million kilowatt hours.
Okay, 1.2 million, that's good. So,
That's a lot of energy, yeah.
part of the power will be used by the building themselves, right? And then the rest of it goes into the system?
The building itself would be any other business, again, as Ms. Jennings said, that this community solar program provides solar to residents, businesses within Bridgewater and the surrounding communities at a discounted rate for those that do not have the ability to do it themselves. The solar generated at this project, this owner of the buildings could enter the program, similar to any other resident of the township could enter the program to receive their electric at a discounted rate. It's not specifically designed to service the proposed buildings. It is designed to be as part of the community solar program which is put back into.
That's why we need the use variance. If it was powering the building, we would not need a use variance. Because your ordinance allows solar rooftops to power the actual building. It doesn't allow you to transfer the power to others.
So what you're saying is that extra power goes out to the...
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly how it's done for all solar systems. The next question I have, you don't have any batteries to hold that power for using it during the night or any of that kind of a thing, right? There's no backup battery system.
Batteries.
I don't think so. It's very expensive. Okay, that's all I have.
I have a question. For the new equipment being added to each building, what would be the square footage for just the new equipment on the ground added to the, added?
I don't have, I mean, we're probably showing maybe 150 square feet, 200 square feet for each building. Again, I know the transformer gets mounted on a concrete pad. The other equipment are on racks, essentially. Not all of them have pads or create real impervious area, so it's really only a very small, for a 20-acre site, it wouldn't trigger anything in terms of any additional coverages or anything like that, but 100 square feet at the most.
So, wait, at the most, how much did you say?
I think each one maybe is 200 square feet for each building, so 400 total.
400? Okay, thank you.
It's the same as it exists today. There's currently access from the building to get up to the roof. The roof-mounted solar panels are required to meet all required fire regulations in terms of clearances and access and egress. So that's why you see there's lanes all the way around there. There's different spots where there are no panels for different roof appurtenances that are coming up to the top. So it's designed to meet all required fire codes, access, and fire safety.
I assume after you submitted the plan to the fire department?
I believe in the board's professionals letter that they requested that we at least get a review or sign off from the fire official. The fire code has a review of all these applications as well.
Okay, so we do not have that.
We have not seen anything from the fire official approving it, no.
Okay. I mean, that's a lot of power to go. I mean, what are you storing in the building?
Each building has separate tenants. I believe 3 Findern is occupied by Quantix, and 5 Findern is Win Global Logistics. Again, they're trucking and warehouse distribution companies. They receive packages, they distribute them, and the owner of the buildings has signed the lease agreement with Solar Landscape to put the solar up on the roofs.
Mrs. Jennings, would your applicant be able to get a letter or the board from the fire company that would?
Yeah, I mean, usually most towns disseminate it to all their different departments, and we get a review letter from those different.
So they had no comment? Yeah.
One of the comments in the joint report was to obtain confirmation from the fire chief that all the fire codes are complied with and it's a safe design. Would you agree if that's a condition of approval to obtain that letter?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, obviously, we'd want the fire department to sign off on it.
Yeah.
Mr. Shelley, is there anything inherent in your design here that would be any different than if this energy was going to be used by those warehouses on site?
No, I mean, maybe some of the equipment would be different on the ground, or maybe there could be something like batteries there to store power that they would generate for their own use.
Okay.
You would probably only have a small portion of the roof occupied by the panels, which would just be enough for them, what they need to generate the power for their facility. So this, that's really the only difference is probably the number of panels, but they each require their own equipment, electric services from the street.
They wouldn't need the distribution boxes, essentially, is what you're saying.
But there could be different things that would have to get swapped out, but it's really a very similar type of setup.
But it's your testimony that this is a larger array of solar panels because they are looking to distribute the energy publicly?
Correct. So the number of panels on the roofs would generate more power than 2 warehouses need. Like we said, it's enough to power 150 homes for a whole year. So that's more power than 2 existing warehouses would be required. But we typically end up having projects in community solar that are on all sorts of different types of buildings, warehouses. Some of those warehouses already have some solar on the roofs, and this program comes in and fills in the rest of the roof area. Or there's ones that have nothing on the roofs, and we come in and occupy the entire roof area to generate as much power as we can to put back into the system.
Thank you.
I think one thing interesting about your ordinance is if it was just the warehouse powering itself and they actually generated extra power, they're allowed to throw it into the ground.
That was basically my question. So
Yeah,
they
they're
could do
allowed to.
this on
They
their own.
overgenerate, they
but
can throw it into
the fact that we put a nameplate on a community solar, it actually has triggered this variance.
Yeah, exactly.
And this happens in a lot of municipalities. With just the language of the ordinances aren't specific as to it being permitted, and we end up coming in.
Yeah, it's a little late for the 2024 recommendations to our council, but I think this is something that we should bring up maybe to our councilmen to look at our local ordinance, because, this is something they could have done on their own with a savings of significance that they wouldn't have had to be here. They wanted to just do this, and we changed some semantics, and essentially this is a non-zoning board project.
It's curious, our section on renewable energy is quite detailed, but dated, probably. But I have to imagine, and this is just my opinion, that it was probably written, it basically separates out rooftop solar, especially in non-residential zones, as a either principal or accessory use. So it considers an accessory use when it is for the building itself with intermittent exchange back to the grid when there is a surplus, but not designed for.
The irony of this is, you have to think of I trade electricity for a living. Think of it as a bathtub, and we're filling up the bathtub with electricity, and then people are taking from the bathtub. The irony is the warehouse will probably be the primary user of this energy.
Yes, well, yes. I think what the distinction is in the ordinance really is accessory is meant to design to the needs of the building,
Right.
whereas principal is considered basically over-designing. And probably when the ordinance was written, solar panel technology was different, looked different, required higher structures and things like
The
that.
energy density is changing from these panels. Obviously it's much higher. We can get a megawatt off of, 2 rooftops. That's incredible.
Yes.
I think it's just something in the back of our mind as we go into 25 to work with the
I
council.
agree. I think that there's probably, like I said, I think that it considered a principal use because of how many panels it involved. So the design of it, but it has changed, it's evolved. Solar panels have evolved. So I think ultimately the recommendation will be to open it up, probably to figure out how to, because it's the same look as if it was going, no one would know. It's an invisible use really, as far as it going back to the grid, but then putting some design standards in as a protection.
And Ms. Jennings, do you represent community solar on many projects or this project?
Oh, many projects I've done for solar.
Or this is something, if our council members had questions, they could come to you and you would be...
Sure. And I think that they would love to see you change the ordinance, because I believe they have other sites that they're looking to develop here in this particular town.
There will be no more warehouses, I assure you. Anyway.
Buildings, self-storage
Gotcha.
facilities, malls.
Gotcha. All right, thank you very much. Any other board questions? Mr. Fresco?
So let me get a clarification, because we keep using the word community solar, but this is an LLC. So who's Solar Landscape LLC?
Solar Landscape is a company that will install the panels on the roof, and they're the ones who are applying for the community solar program through the state, which offers, again, the energy is put into the community solar program. Residents of this township, as well as surrounding townships, can enter into that program to receive discounted rates on their.
So they're essentially solar farmers, would you say?
That's a good
Okay,
word,
they're
yep.
solar farmers, and they're looking for crops to put these solar panels on.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, you know, we, as much as we want to say, hey, let's welcome them, these are serious, this is a massive project. How many of these projects do you have in New Jersey currently?
Probably 50.
50? How many do you have in Somerset County?
That I don't know.
Okay. Any concentration in the state, would you say? I mean, do you have some in the neighborhood? I mean, something that you can say, hey, we did this over here, or something we might know?
We've been working with Solar Landscape over the past probably 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
We've done projects literally all over the state, top to bottom, middle, all
Yeah,
around. So they're spread out. Really, the idea is you take a program, goes in a municipality, there's a radius around there, because those are the people that can be part of it. And the goal is to have coverage across the whole state to provide everybody part of it. Some municipalities have more programs or more opportunity. But from what our experience is from my working with them, we're spread out all over the place, trying to create as much coverage as we can.
Yeah, like Thursday night, we're in Voorhees. They're not going to be in Piscataway. We've done Newark, we've done Cherry Hill, we're down in,
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're going to speak on behalf of Solar Landscape? Okay. I mean, because we're obviously, we have to confirm that these guys are, if something goes wrong, right, it's on them. Are they the ones that are going to service this? They're the
you
ones
can
that are...
Google them. I think they're the largest solar provider in the state.
Great, okay.
Yes, there's a maintenance plan associated with the panels. They have a maintenance team that comes out here and does visual inspections twice a year. If anything's wrong with the panels, they're serviced or replaced. So again,
How long will it take to do this?
from the time they start to finish, 3 months.
3 months?
They want to be operational by June.
All right, great, thank you.
Could you describe the orientation of the panels? I mean, the site is oriented south. Are they going to be essentially laying flat on the roof? Are they going to be angled toward the southeast? And if, whatever the positioning is, do we run the risk of it creating any kind of visual interference with traffic on the adjacent roads?
So yeah, the panels lay flat on the roofs. There's pretty much like a 6-inch projection off the top of the roof. They're configured in a manner to be parallel with the building lines to maximize the number of panels. So again, there's about a 6-inch projection over the top of the roof. With the height of the existing buildings at 25 and a half, 26 feet above the ground, you're not going to see the panels from the adjacent street, especially with the proximity of the buildings to the street. They're not going to be visible. There's no issues with the height requirements in the town.
Yeah, I'm mostly concerned with Findern Avenue and Main Street as it runs into Manville, because you have the dividing line there. So if you're coming from either direction, I want to make sure that those panels aren't angled in such a way as to in any way create a glare or visual impairment from the adjacent roadways. And
The FAA non-glare determination, you have to get that.
okay, great, thank you.
You had mentioned that the roofs are being leased from the owners of the warehouse. How long are those leases for? Do you know? Okay. And should the owner of the warehouse sell at any point in there, is it automatically transferred to the new owner? Okay.
Kevin, do you just want to touch on the bulk variances with respect to the accessory structures?
Yeah, so there's, I mean, just in terms of the bulk variances on the property, there's existing non-conforming conditions for minimum lot width. 369.8 feet is existing, where 500 feet is required. Existing non-conforming front yard setback of 29.5 feet, where 150 feet is required. Existing non-conforming condition for the rear yard setback of 50.5 feet, whereas 100 feet is required. Again, these are all existing non-conforming conditions. The proposed solar panels and ground-mounted equipment don't have any impact impact on any of those existing non-conforming conditions. And there's no coverage issues, building height issues, or any new variances that are created as part of this application.
And what about the status of outside agency approvals? I mentioned the FAA determination. What
With the
about
FAA
county?
determination, we would require county, typically it's a county letter, no interest, site plan.
We already have that, I believe, correct? Okay. And
That
then
would be-
PSC&G approval? Is that the power source here?
Correct.
And then you had an opportunity to review the board planners and engineers review letter?
Yes.
Do you have any specific comments that you'd like to address, or can we comply
No,
with everything?
I think we could agree to comply. There was a couple items in here that they kind of asked for some testimony on, which I tried to cover here, but if there's anything else that needs further clarifications, I'd be happy to.
No, we're going to assume anything that you have read here in this planner's review memo that you're going to accept unless you're going to state it right now.
We accept it.
Great. All right, any other board questions? Board professionals?
Thank you. I believe there was testimony earlier, you said that none of the ground-mounted equipment was located within the floodplain? Was that?
Within the floodway.
Within the floodway. There's at least one structure on the western side of the property, the step-up transformer, that's owned by the utility. That's in a 100-year floodplain, according to the present flood, national flood hazard layer. Is there, I know that some concerns were raised by the board members about that. Does that have to be elevated at all?
So the transformers have to be, I mean, essentially all the riser poles on the transformers are installed per PSE&G standards and requirements. So they really have the jurisdiction and say as to how those equipment get installed. So they would make a determination whether there's any type of raised panel, but based off of the review that they've had for the project, they've not indicated that anything needs to get raised for that transformer.
Is that something that the DEP would opine on, as far as, development within a flood hazard area?
Specifically for transformers, I'd have to review that, but I know there's permit by rules for different utility infrastructure within flood zones. We'd review that, but again, if any equipment did require a DEP approval, it would be required to be obtained, or it would worked out with PSC&G to relocate it so that no permitting would be required.
Okay. I think that the board has some purview here. I mean, electricity and water don't mix very well. Obviously, PSC&G is going to do what's in the best interest of the utility here to not put it in harm's way. But I think that probably as part of, if this is approved, part of resolution compliance would be to see some either letter from PSC&G assuring that it's going to be.
Typically, PSC&G gives these types of assurances because it's ultimately going to be their problem. It's going to create an imbalance on their system if there's a trip from the water. Is that something, Ms. Jennings, that you could get from PSC&G?
Yeah, I mean, I know we have some letters from PSC&G approving the plans and charging quite substantial fees for the privilege of connecting. So we do have those. We could submit the PSC&G. I mean, they basically dictate, you can't really tell them where you're putting the transformers or the poles. We've run into this problem before in other towns.
So PSC&G is going to select, and they're going to be the oversight on this project?
For their location of their poles and their
Right, so they set the poles, the power goes down the poles, set the transformer pad, they set the transformer, and then after the transformer, it's, privately owned secondary, but they own the poles, they own the transformers.
The only thing I just want to make sure that if PSC&G doesn't know about floodplains or think about the way it's a pad-mounted transformer. So that's my only indication here is that we probably need some sign-off about it being in a flood hazard area.
Is that a letter?
I don't disagree. Yeah.
I don't know you're going to get that.
I don't want to require
I
something.
know you're going to get a
Yeah,
specific
yeah.
letter like that. We have a letter.
Here's the situation. If we don't get this letter? Theoretically, if something were to happen and was to cause a blackout in the area, did the zoning board approve something that theoretically caused damage?
It wouldn't cause a blackout in the area, it would.
Wow, none of us work for PSE&G. I have worked for PSE&G. Their design is pretty incredible, and not in a good way. We do need something that is going to show that this board did not approve something that is inherently dangerous, even though it is indeed inherently beneficial. Do you follow my thinking here?
I'm just trying to figure out what it would be that we would be trying to get.
Either an NJDEP letter or no interest, that they don't have, if they don't have a problem with it, being in a flood hazard area, that's fine too. Just somebody signing off saying they're.
Something that removes any town liability.
Correct. Correct. I think that's probably the best move. And everything else, it seems like it's just outside of it on the easternmost side. The transformers are all outside of it, so that's not a problem, but I just wanted to focus on that. I think over the course of the board asking questions, they've asked a lot of the same questions that I had, so I don't think I have anything further, but I will reiterate that I do believe that the recommendation or suggestion raised in the report about the fire chief signing off on these plans is crucial.
Well, it sounds like there was a review. He just had no comment. Maybe we can just get a letter from him that says he has no comment? Okay. Perfect.
I mostly say that because I want to make sure that the perimeter access to the roof is good, that they can move, if they do need to get on access to the roof, that they can navigate between the panels. I want to make sure that the fire chief is well aware of the design.
Well, just looking at 126-335, it does talk about, and that's our local ordinance, it does talk about things like, locking mechanisms on the transformer panels. All those things, I assume, because it's in the letter, you're okay with complying with?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Burr.
I just had a quick question, and I don't know who actually would be the right person to answer. Do we know what the level is of the floodplain to make it out of the floodplain? Like, do we know what the difference would be?
Rephrase that?
Sorry. To mount the equipment properly, we believe it's in the 100-year floodplain. How much higher does it have to be out of the 100-year floodplain?
I think DEP would probably say what the finished floor elevation would have to be for it. That's why we probably want to get their opinion.
Okay.
They're in the 100-year floodplain, so.
Question, are you required to obtain DEP permits or approvals for this project?
We didn't think we needed, but we'll try to get this letter.
Through either DEP or PSE&G.
PSE&G.
Again, I don't want to require something that they can't get. I think you can get the PSE&G letter one way or the other. I'm not sure.
Well, the utility would either be covered under a DEP permit by rule, and if that's the case, and we show that we meet all the conditions, then there is.
It would be a normal
and there is
condition
no
from this
DEP.
board to obtain other agency approvals, of course, right?
And that's actually what I was going to suggest is, let's get some more information on whether or not this qualifies as a DEP permit by rule, because then it doesn't need to be submitted formally to DEP. It's almost like a self-certification, and I think the applicant's engineer can provide that information. Because it's a little bit deceiving on the plan, because I think some of the FEMA flood information was superimposed. But it does show that there's ground-mounted equipment in some of those areas. Now, they may not be a formal flood hazard area or riparian zone that DEP regulates, so there's a little bit of uncertainty there. So I think the applicant would be well-served, and I'm hearing.
I'm curious what, JCP&L serves where I live down at Point Pleasant part of the year. They have a lot of requirements, but these things all are getting lifted now, and those FEMA rules have all changed. I would feel better PSE&G acknowledging this DEP situation and just letting us know that we're in a safe place on these mounts.
We'll pull some more information on that effort and get some more information over to you guys.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Chairman, you just stole my question, but I just want to reiterate, or I just want to ask it again. So in Catherine and my memo, we do copy through a few different sections of our existing solar energy ordinance. Am I correct that you are in compliance with all of the different provisions of the township's ordinance on page 4? And I guess 6 into 7? Is there anything in the existing ordinance that you will not comply with as a result of this project, or?
No, no.
Okay.
Yeah, we reviewed these and we didn't see
Okay.
anything here that stands out as problematic for the project.
Okay. And is there any signage that is being proposed of any kind on the ground or anywhere around that would be visible to the public?
No,
as a
no
result of this?
signage, nothing that says solar landscape or community solar.
Okay.
Just be whatever, maybe stickers or notices on the equipment itself, but yeah, no actual signage.
And then in terms of maintenance, I had understood that there will be a maintenance plan that's agreed to between the owner of the buildings and Community Solar, and Community Solar is solely responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of the panels.
Solar landscape.
Solar line.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, they have a maintenance plan for every project of theirs that establishes regular and routine maintenance.
Right, we can give you a copy of that.
Is that, I was just going to ask, is that something that you can provide to the board as a condition if this
That's a
is?
standard ask.
That's all I had. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
You're good? All right, thank you. Members of the public, questions on engineering? All right, seeing none, back to you.
Okay, sure. I wasn't going to call Austin, but I think that some of the board members, you're good?
Unless the other board members, I feel satisfied if they have that many jobs. I just want to make sure it's a reputable company and they have a history of doing these successfully. So
We can,
that's fine. Don't go on.
Ms. Jennings, we can query the board. Does anyone have questions for the solar entity, the LLC, that's going to be in charge of construction/maintenance, decommissioning? Okay, sure. Let's call him up. And did we swear him in? We did. Okay.
If you could, just Austin, for the record, just indicate your background and affiliation.
And start with your name.
Sure. Austin Corso, again, with Solar Landscape. I have a degree in mechanical engineering from
Before we get to that, would you spell your last name, please?
Corso, C-O-R-S-O.
Thank you.
I come from a background in mechanical engineering, got my degree from NJIT in 2018. Since then, I've been in the solar energy, or the solar industry since then, so about 6 years under my belt. At Solar Landscape specifically, been here for a bit over a year now and manage all the permits that go through, as well as the engineering, ensuring that things go in time.
What's your title there at Solar Landscape?
Pre-construction manager.
Pre-construction manager, got it.
And you're responsible for this particular project?
Correct.
Okay. If Mr. Board Member has some specific questions?
With respect to Solar Landscape LLC, have they been doing the community solar exclusively as their business model, or had they done other projects previously being involved in the community solar program?
We've done other projects that are not community solar. However, since the program has been initiated in New Jersey since 2019, we have been doing projects in New Jersey under this community solar program.
Thank you. And as I said earlier, I believe the LLC is a for-profit entity, and that is part of your business model.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And with respect to the solar panels themselves, your experience with installing them, the maintenance of them, and the longevity of them, how would you generally describe that, and more specifically, describe this application?
I would say that, generally speaking, the installation of these solar panels is like the typical solar installation that we do. They have a industry standard shelf life of about 20 years as per our lease. There is a decommissioning plan after that fact when the lease is up, or we have the option to extend it if needed.
Mm-hmm. And with respect to the equipment you're using now, is this something new or something you've used previously in other applications?
We've used all this equipment previously.
And your experience with this equipment has been that You tell me, they require little maintenance, they operate efficiently, you've had no failures, you haven't had to replace them, something along those lines.
No issues with this equipment specifically.
Okay, great. And if there is an issue, how do people know to contact you? For example, we're going to have the fire chief do an evaluation. Maybe somebody's driving by and they see something that is irregular. How do they know who to contact? They just call 911 and hope that we know who you are?
Well, first and foremost, we have extensive monitoring systems on these projects and these panels specifically. If there is so much as to be snow over the modules, we are aware of it. So there's extensive monitoring systems.
You were going to say bird poop, weren't you? Because that's the problem, right?
Sorry?
You were going to say bird poop on a panel.
It'll catch that too. In addition, when we are submitting these plans, we obviously need to get building, electric, and fire permits. So we are submitting all of our permits to the fire chiefs so that they have that review. The best way effectively would be, I assume, if there's something detrimental that somebody is noticing, to call 911.
Okay, great, thank you.
As part of your agreement with Community Solar, do you have a contracted value of megawatt hours that are output on the system?
I think we stated the output. We do it on a yearly basis.
Well, this is going to safety, so if you were to be deficient in that calculation, you have sensors that would pick that up?
Yes.
So you would have a sensor if there was to be an overload or an inverter collapse or something that was to be catastrophic on the system, you would see it real time?
Yes.
What would happen if that was happening in the middle of the night? Who would pick up on that?
It would still pick up on that.
Who monitors that?
We do that internally. So,
so where does
Solar
that
Landscape
happen?
Does have that monitoring system.
Who?
Solar Landscape.
Okay, so you have a 24-hour employee that's in charge of monitoring the output of your solar systems?
We have an individual that gets real-time monitoring in the event that there is a concern, and he is always monitoring.
Now, I don't know anything about your company, but I do know this is an inherent problem in the solar industry where we have bankruptcies and lots of changes of ownership. If something was to happen in the 20-year lease horizon, who would be in charge of decommissioning, or who would be then in charge of monitoring if there was a financial failure of your company, Solar Landscape LLC?
That's a great question. I mean, in the same instance, if there's like a catastrophic issue or like a meteor hits the site,
right.
Effectively we will no longer generate power if there is nobody to monitor that system. As it pertains to sale,
so 25 years, I've been nothing but an energy trader. So if your company goes bankrupt, and these companies do go bankrupt, who is in charge of monitoring your systems and catastrophic failure systems?
The system would go offline.
So the answer is PSE&G, isn't it? Wouldn't it be the utility? It would fall back. Ultimately, the utility would be in charge of monitoring the safety if something was to happen. If your company ceased to exist tomorrow, wouldn't the utility operator be in charge?
Since we're the owner and the operator, if we are out of business, then we are no longer...
It sounds like PSE&G would come out and pull the switch, and they would turn this off?
It would likely turn off, yes, if we are no longer in this.
Likely, or they would?
I believe they would turn it off.
If the company goes out of business and no one is able to monitor your day-to-day safety and your catastrophic operations, who comes and flips this switch? Who ultimately will turn this off from the grid?
I don't know specifically, but I would imagine it would just shut down.
Is there something in any kind of agreement with PSE&G? I think you mentioned before that there was some kind of documentation with PSE&G that they accept this energy. Is there anything about what the chairman's asking about in that? Any clauses about?
I wouldn't know off the top of my head, but I can find that information out for you guys.
What would we call that? An operations letter that on a safety basis? What would happen if this company ceased to be monitored?
We'd either like, if it's not part of their agreements with PSE&G, we'd like some sort of letter, I think, to answer the question you're getting at.
Well, and ultimately, who would decommission this if the 20-year life is a reasonable life? And again, Solar Landscape is not in business. Who's in charge of these things? Who ultimately decommissions it?
We'll have to find, I don't know the answer. I mean,
Community Solar is a nonprofit, it sounds like.
it's not a nonprofit. It's a for-profit company, absolutely.
But it's guided by New Jersey BPU, so ultimately there would be...
You have to get the licensing from BPU. Yeah, you just can't go and do community solar because you want to do community solar. Your project has to meet certain criteria for the BPU to say, okay, go go ahead and get it, and guys, you got to go and get it by a certain date. So we have the right to do it, but we have to get this up and installed, I think, by June 1st of 2025?
Yes.
In order for it to be accepted into the program.
Community Solar then is not a state agency? You said it's an independent entity that is also for-profit, or did I
No,
misunderstand you?
Solar Landscape is the entity. Community
Correct.
Solar is just the name of what the state calls
Is the program.
Right.
EPU runs, yeah.
So the Community Solar is a state-sponsored program to which you've made an application for your solar panels, should this board approve it, and you mentioned that you would also have to have them built by June, whatever the date was.
There's deadlines as to when you have to have them up and running and operating.
So, along with the chairman, I would think you should be able to get some sort of answer and make any approval contingent on that answer to what happens if, what is it again? I got to get it right. Solar Landscape goes out of business, or you just cease to be able to generate for whatever reason. Who shuts it down? And I would agree with the chairman as well. It's likely PSE&G, but we don't know, so we'd like to know.
There has to be a master operating agreement between these panels, the transformer, and ultimately the PSE&G distribution
There's
system.
probably a power purchase agreement.
Yeah.
And in the power purchase agreement it's probably all laid out. I just don't do that. I'm the land use attorney.
Right.
I don't know what's in those.
And I'm not asking you to submit the power purchase agreement, because that is confidential.
Pretty lengthy.
But the language that talks about, the fallback operator, I think that's the contract language. So fallback operations in the event that you cease to exist legally, I think is important.
Yeah, or who shuts it down, either way.
We can provide that information.
And if it's not called fallback operator, just who is the operator? Who is inherently in charge of safety, given that, the entity ceases to exist? Thank you. And we'll stipulate to that. All right. Any other board questions?
Have you had any fires at any of your properties where Solar City, Solar Landscape, has panels?
I don't know of any. There may have been, but none that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Board professionals.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the pre-construction manager for the project, were you involved in site selection?
No, I don't get involved in site selection.
Okay, then never mind. My questions were all going to be about site selection, but I have no further questions then. Thank you.
Mr. Burr, anything?
One question, is there typically a decommissioning plan associated with the end game of these panels?
Yes.
Is that something as well that could be provided to the
Yes.
board?
I think that's in the maintenance plan. It's
Yeah.
Is that's
Yeah.
part of the maintenance plan?
Yes.
Essentially, once
Even
these
better.
leases are complete, we have to decommission the full plan. The only thing that I didn't know is off chance if there's a catastrophic event with Solar Landscape, but I can get that confirmed.
Thank you.
All right, members of the public, questions for Mr. Corso? All right, seeing none. Your next witness.
Yep, I'd like to wrap it up with our planner, Andrew Janu.
Again, just your name for the record, please.
Andrew Janu, Janiw.
And if you could, Andrew, for the benefit of the board, give your background and qualifications.
Certainly. I have a bachelor's and master's degree in civil engineering from the New Jersey Institute of Technology. I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey, as well as a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. I've been a principal in the firm of Beacon Planning and Consulting Services, located in Colts Neck, New Jersey, for the past 25 years. Currently serving as the planner for the Borough of Carteret in Middlesex County, Borough of Freehold in Monmouth County, Livingston Township, and redevelopment planner for Bayonne and South Amboy. And in 2022, Governor Murphy appointed me to the State Board of Professional Planners.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew, if you could, you've heard the testimony and reviewed the application in the township's ordinance and master plan, correct?
I have.
And if you could just walk us through why you believe that the applicant's entitled to the use variance requested?
Certainly. So in preparation of this evening, in addition to reviewing the plans, I've reviewed your master plan, your ordinances. As this board knows, variances have to be vetted with a public purpose, not just for the benefit of the applicant. That means we look at your master plan. Your master plan talks about promoting a balanced variety of recreational, public, commercial, industrial uses within the community, and promoting appearance within the community. In this instance, We are not changing the layout of the property in any way, shape, or form. The buildings are existing, the footprints will remain the same, the circulation drives, the parking will remain the same. So the visual appearance of the property will not be changed by this application. We also look to the municipal land use law for the public purposes that are defining the public benefits. And in this case, I believe there are two that are specifically on point to this application. The first is A, to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in this state in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. Donna mentioned in her introduction that the use is inherently beneficial, and that is absolutely correct. New Jersey legislature recognizes clean and renewable energy sources as inherently beneficial use. I'll go into that momentarily. But another purpose of the MLUL is purpose N, which is to promote the utilization of renewable energy resources. So we are on point with two public purposes defined within the municipal land use law. With respect to the use variance that's triggered by this application, and again, that use variance is related to ultimately the end user of the energy that's generated here. Had this energy been solely for the warehouses that are on this property, we wouldn't be here, we wouldn't need the use variance. There's discussion a little bit by the chairman with respect to your ordinances, and I believe your ordinances with respect to solar date back to 2011, 2012, which was before the community solar program came into existence. So it's understandable, and this is something I run across quite frequently. But having said that, as I had mentioned, the New Jersey legislature has found that renewable energy facilities are inherently beneficial. The concept of inherently beneficial uses was judicially created to deal with a relatively narrow range of uses. And these range as such uses as hospitals, schools, child care centers, group homes, and specifically wind, solar, and photovoltaic energy sources or structures. These uses are universally recognized to be valued to the community because they fundamentally serve the public good and promote the general welfare. And as such, they satisfy the positive criteria within the D1 use variance. That's the special need. With respect to inherently beneficial use, the bellwether case is SECA v. Board of Adjustment in Wall Township, which dealt with a head trauma center. But the SECA court, an inherently beneficial application, prescribed a balance test, known as the SECA test, in order to identify what a board should consider in weighing an inherently beneficial use for the community. And these specifically are, one, to initially identify the public interest at stake. And here we're dealing with the generation of clean, renewable energy for use by the community overall, not just for one specific user. Therefore, the public will directly benefit in a reduction in electrical costs in this. As was mentioned also, a portion of this energy will be made available to low and moderate income families in the community, thus enhancing the affordability of energy costs. Two is to identify the detrimental effects that would ensue the grant of the variance. So we talked this evening about a couple of the concerns of the board with respect to the placement of the transformer. Those are all valid, and we will have those vetted as part of the conditions. But the application really doesn't have a detrimental effect on the community because the ordinance already permits roof-mounted solar as an accessory use in the district. Again, going through this, if this was solely for the benefit of the warehouses, this would not require a use variance. But because it's going to the community solar, because it'll benefit other people in the community and not just the property itself, it will require this use variance. So when we look at the detrimental effects, I would say they're negligible because this is something that your ordinance in one way, shape, or form already anticipates. The third is to determine whether it can reduce any detrimental effects by opposing reasonable conditions. And we've talked about that. We've talked about how we'll deal with the transformers. We'll have the fire officials make sure that this is vetted, and this will be vetted through your building department as well, through the installation process. And then finally, we have to weigh the positive against the negative criteria. And again, understanding that this will generate energy that will benefit the community at large. It'll provide low-cost energy to low-income families. The roof-mounted nature of the project is already anticipated within the district. It'll have a minimal visual impact. The panels, I believe, were mentioned to be no more than 6 inches above the existing roof line. And with respect to the glare, we do have the FAA letter, And one of the things we have to consider when we look at solar panels by their very nature absorb light, they don't reflect light. There were some cadmium panels that were very early on in the early 2000s that had a reflective coating on them. Those are no longer manufactured or prevalent anywhere. These are silicone panels, and they essentially absorb light. They're a matte finish type of panel. We don't have to worry about glare or any kind of visual intrusion. So when we look at the positive and negative criteria, I think certainly we recognize the benefit of green energy. We recognize the benefit of renewable energy. We recognize the benefit of being able to provide lower cost energy to a community. And we recognize that your ordinance already permits roof-mounted panels as an accessory for the buildings. What we're doing here is simply looking to have another resource in order to direct the energy to. There are several C variances or bulk variances that are required, and these are generally related to the location of the equipment, the inverters, and the like within your front yard where they're not permitted. It also talks about having elevated electrical lines, which are not permitted in your district. And finally, permitting more than 2 accessory structures on one lot. And again, each roof system will have its own set of inverters and transmission equipment. That's why there's essentially two accessories on the rooftop with 2 sets of distribution equipment that's ground mounted. Don had mentioned the case of Price v. Himeji, which is one of the bellwether cases in terms of use variances and how bulk variances are subsumed within a use variance because the zone doesn't anticipate that use. In this case, we can also qualify this on the bulk standards under the C2 criteria, or the balance test, which talks about the application related to a specific property it is, the purposes of the municipal land use law being advanced. I had mentioned 2 and read those into the record. And finally, that the benefits of the deviation would outweigh any detriment. Keeping in mind this property was already configured in terms of the location and the restrictions due to the floodplains and the flood areas, the location of the equipment that's ground mounted was essentially predetermined by all those conditions. So there's nowhere else essentially where they can go. They're going into the front yard. They'll be within an industrial district, and as you can see from that area, this is an area that largely to the south borders Manville, but is environmentally restricted. There's nothing essentially to the south. To the north, there is industrial buildings and commercial buildings, which would not have any detrimental impact from the location of this equipment. So when we look at that, I think that on balance, it's a good application. With respect to the negative criteria, we'd have to satisfy the 2 prongs, meaning that the variance can be granted without substantial detriment. I don't see any substantial detriment. This is going to be low impact in terms of visual, noise, any of the nuisance issues that you can affect. And the impervious coverage would be, I think, estimated by our engineer to be no more than 400 square feet for both sets of ground-mounted equipment. And finally, that the variance will not substantially impair the intent or purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. Again, the zone plan permits roof-mounted panels. The difference here is where that energy goes. So I think when we look at this, not only from the Price v. Himeji aspect in terms of this something not being anticipated, but also on the balance test, it's a good application. The use variance can be granted. The subsumed bulk variances also can be granted without detriment to the community. And ultimately, we're all kind of pushing for green energy and resources like this. I think this is a good application, particularly because of where it's located, how it's located, and the fact that it's really non-intrusive.
Board questions on the planning testimony?
Would you talk to particular suitability? Would you address particular suitability of this use for this site?
They're inherently beneficial. You don't have to, because the positive criteria of the D1 is satisfied by the use being recognized as something that's of benefit to the community on a wholesale basis.
Yeah, all the board needs to look at on this application is really the negative criteria.
Thank you.
Very quick question. Do you want to put anything on the record on a positive benefit from the renewable energy credits that are generated from this? I know the state has a lot of programs, the SRECs and so forth, that aside from low-cost energy, you'll be actually deriving credits given to them by the state. Do you want to put anything?
That's not my pay grade.
Fair enough. I'm just trying to give you a softball, but fair enough. Board professionals.
I have no questions for this witness, but if the board has any questions about the inherently beneficial use and what the threshold is for your decisions based on that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Burr.
No questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members of the public, questions on planning testimony? All right, seeing none, thank you, sir. All right. Yeah, if you want to wrap up, and then we'll go through stipulations. Yeah.
Yeah, so as we've indicated and stated, the use itself, really, other than the fact that we're generating power to other sources, would be permitted. The use in and of itself is inherently beneficial, and we really think there's no negative impact, and we would respectfully request that the board grant the relief that we seek, subject to all the conditions that we discussed.
Rich, you want to walk us
Yep,
through it?
those conditions would be, applicant would obtain confirmation from the fire official that all fire codes are compliant with, or complied with, rather, and that the configuration represents a safe design. Provide a letter from PSE&G that the proposed location of the transformers is an approved location. Provide a copy of the maintenance plan and the decommissioning plan for the site. Provide proof as to what entity would decommission and secure the site if the applicant terminated business. I did this already. And that's all I had.
All right, thank you. We're going to open up deliberations. Jim, if you're ready.
Actually, it's a little interesting to me because I was approached a couple months ago by a different company, and I'm in the process, actually, construction should start in about 2 or 3 weeks, I'm hoping. I'm actually doing it on a smaller scale at my house. So I actually thought the board had terrific questions, and the professionals, because I had a list of about 25 or 30 questions before I signed off on my deal about a month and a half ago. So I'm pretty familiar with the process, and it's a pretty straightforward application, so I'm in favor of the application.
All right, thank you. Let's get down to you, Mr. Vessia.
Overall, I do agree. I think there's definitely a big, large benefit to the community. Certainly want to see the fire marshal. Okay, the plan, whatever modifications they may have, if any. Regarding sort of, removing the line between, having the solar panels for your own building versus serving the community, I look at this as almost like a power plant, or if you kind of take the analogy of putting a standby generator for your home, we're not going to put 140, standby generators to power a community or put a gas turbine in a building and still call it the same sort of, occupancy use. So, I think the technology is great, great thing, all for it. It is somewhat of a new technology. A lot of our building codes and fire codes are based upon precedents of, fires in the past. So I think we should just keep that in mind if we're changing any ordinances this time, that this is still new. We haven't had these for a long period of time where the panels have degraded, the equipment has degraded, debris has sort of built up in these to sort of, change the ordinance at this time. But I am for this application. It's pretty far away from any residential areas, and I'm for it. Thank you.
I think sometimes we have businesses come in here and, they try to give us, different types of things, huge monuments on the side of our natural resources. So I kind of feel like personally, had I known that this was a large reputable company, understand what your model was, a little bit about the company, knowing, you're friends with the governor and you've got 50 or 60 of these things out there. I think going into this, maybe, my approach would have been different. But now that I understand that, and I think it's a great case that you put on, I fully support it. And I wish you good luck with it. Hopefully you meet your deadline.
Thank you.
Mr. Sweeney.
Yeah, it's a good application, no detrimental impacts. It's an inherently beneficial use. I just don't understand the township's classification of this as something that requires a use variance, but that's another issue. I'm in favor of the application.
Mrs. Amin.
It's a very nice project. With the amount of electricity that will be generated through the sun, it's really good for the environment and everything else. And the way I look at it, the equipment that's sitting on the ground is similar to putting an emergency generator and generating power and that kind of a thing. So there's no problem with that. So I'm in favor of approving the project.
I'm in favor as well. I think New Jersey is just in an unfortunate situation where we're short energy. We've always been short energy. We mostly buy our power from Pennsylvania and places far like Niagara Falls and far away as North Carolina. And things like AI and new technologies only precipitate our need for more energy. Essentially, no one wants to build a power plant right now in this uncertain time of energy regulation. So I think solar definitely bridges a gap between regulation and the demand side. I am very curious to make sure that we have properly situated these transformers and any ground-mounted equipment. I'm looking forward to seeing PSE&G's viewpoint on this, and I want to make sure they remove any liability from the township. But given that, I'm fully in favor, and it was a very nice presentation. Mr. Seacat.
I feel exactly the same way as Mr. Chairman has outlined. My biggest concern was the installation of the ground equipment and the safety of that. With the PSE&G oversight, I have no concerns, so I will support the application.
Thank you. Mr. Kulak.
Yeah, I too agree that this is a project that we should approve. I think the inherently beneficial use of solar energy is something that really is driving the approval of the application. You had, the planner mentioned that the location of the ground equipment would be subsumed in the use variance. We're not concerned about the aesthetics of that location, but rather the safety of that location of the transformers to the ground equipment. And with the stipulation that if they need to be elevated, they would be elevated, in fact, for safety's sake. I think that this is a project we could support.
Thank you. Mr. Cabot.
Yeah, I tend to be in favor of renewable energy if it's done in a safe and responsible manner, based on the stipulations we've talked about. I don't have any concerns on this front, so I'd be in support as well.
Thank you. All right, based on the deliberations, it sounds like I'd be seeking a motion to approve.
I move.
Mr. Wiley, do I have a second, please?
Second.
Mr. Sweeney. Yes.
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 All right, Ms. Jennings.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody have a great holiday.
All right, likewise. And we're going to do some quick board business. If you can kind of just drag everybody outside, appreciate it. Very, very quickly, I just want to thank everyone on the board. It's been a challenging year, but it's been a productive year. I know that, Jim, I don't want to speak for you, but every minute you've been here, I've really taken it to heart in gratitude, but also the town massively appreciates your contribution, your missing family events, dinners, baseball games, soccer games. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I know the councilman, especially Michael Kirsch, who's our land use liaison, calls me 5 times a week, and he constantly mentions what a great board this is. So your work and your contribution definitely does not go unnoticed. Mr. Sweeney has a great point. We have a backlog. None of that backlog was created except probably by me screaming at Starbucks, so I do apologize, but we're going to have a safe thoroughfare, hopefully. But again, thank you for a wonderful year. Thank you for saving trees. Thank you for contributing to great neighborhoods, good projects. And if anyone has any board business going into next year, now is the time. Mr. Sweeney, are you satisfied on your issue you mentioned before?
Yeah, we need to talk more about it, but I think that's the point.
Yes.
Let's think about it.
Great. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for teaching a lot of us what we know, and thank you for the board of 2013. I know Jim and I, Jim was here, I wasn't here just yet, but thank you for everything. I do appreciate it, and I try and pay homage to those boards and Larry Vastola and all the great people we learned from back then. So thank you again, sir. Merry Christmas, happy holidays. Could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I move.
A second? Mr. Fresco.
So we don't meet till the second week of January.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays. Our next meeting is January 14th, 7 p.m., this room.
Is that it?
Yeah, mine for the
Happy holidays.
That's a long time. That's
So
a-
between, so